but I'm going to start with a quote from Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a neurologist and a psychiatrist, an author, a philosopher, and speaker who survived a concentration camp during the Holocaust. And Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So the most powerful intervention point to apply a mindfulness practice is between stimuli and the response reactivity, to stretch that space. What gives us actionable access to creating that space? Well, it harkens on what you've all been saying. And so let's say that from leadership, we have an agreement that we're all on Team Human, that our intentionality is to be practicing mindful practices in order to live into our ethos of being on Team Human, and we're all in this together. So one of the intervention practices that could be applied is stop. You have the stimuli, you feel the clutch, and you stop. You stop. You take 3 deep breaths. It goes back to what Sherman said. You observe your breath and your body. And you proceed in compassion and open communication with a commitment to investigate your inner experience. So you've stopped. And that there's a neurotransmitter in the brain that you've activated now that actually goes beyond your reactivity and allows you to move from a me, my, mine perspective to a we perspective. And then let's say you've codified and operationalized the next step in your organization, which is we commit and agree to be in a discovery mode of communication. What is a discovery mode of communication? It's open and we don't know. So we're committed to discover, to be surprised, to stumble and fumble into a new understanding and a new idea. I do mostly EEO mediation and at an equal employment opportunity, and there's a discriminatory allegation in those mediations. And if I look at that conflict and I look at the timeline of that conflict, early on, there's an intervention point where if those two parties had sat down and communicated each other in a discovery mode of communication, and even in that uncomfortable space had adhered to those practices, the chances that it had escalated to the point where I arrive probably would not have happened, because the resource to resolve and the deleterious and harmful consequences of what can transpire once they're in the EEO process. And going back to what Sherman said, is that nothing is more important than the mindful practice of a discovery mode of communication now that we're working remotely. We do not have the tone of voice. We can't walk into each other's office and say, hey, like, I got this email, like, what's up with that? You know, just the comfort and the peacefulness of seeing each other's faces, of the communication and the signaling that our brain gets from being in real space, real-time communication. So to be in a discovery mode of communication, you feel the stimuli, you stop, you say, okay, I'm committed to a discovery mode of communication, and I'm going to reach out and make a phone call. Now, at LinkedIn, they have a process called clean conflict. And what I've witnessed is in organizations that resource conflict resolution, they also have a mindfulness practice of no gossip. And we are narrative by nature. We make up stories, and we're saying mindfulness and using it in its, you know, sort of positive thing. But the mind has a tremendous capacity for self-delusion. So if we intervene and apply mindfulness early on in the conflict between stimulus, we create that space, we action that space, then we're really, really resourcing conflict resolution. And I'll just end by saying that there is nothing that is going to support overall workability than if we collectively agree to those practices. If you think about a rowing team, if you've ever seen the exquisite beauty and symmetry and cohesion of a team that's rowing on a row team, there's just power and cohesiveness in that. And so if we're collectively agreeing to these practices, and we're messy human beings, we're going to stumble and fumble and fall, but if we commit to them and we align with them, then we have so much more potentiality to create a shared dignity in the workplace. And the one other mindfulness practice that I think underlies everything is intentionality. Intentionality is like a red carpet that you roll out and you step on and you walk. What is our intention in the workplace? What is our intention with this person in front of us when we feel that stimuli? What is our intention in terms of our relationships? What is our intention in moving towards this goal? What is our intention when conflict arises? Having the mindfulness practice of setting intention is very powerful and creative, and it has a really alive and really electric dynamic to it.
Thanks, Colleen. Do you think that mindfulness has a unique quality when people are synchronized in a mindfulness practice, that it's actually unique compared to other types of sort of normal everyday synchronicity?
Well, as we see with quantum physics, we're in a field of infinite possibility. So again, going back to that space, right? What gives us actionable access that we have all ways of being and acting in that space, right? So even if one of us is practicing that mindfulness because we're in a shared field of connectivity, quantum physics evidences that, then we're going to affect the field. But that's why peak team performance, when everyone is actuating that consciousness, that's power. That's creative power.
Yeah. And there's something real to it too. There's something authentic. I mean, even when we're practicing together, it feels like we kind of drop our masks, we drop our kind of normal, thing for the moment, and we all just become really human in that moment.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true.
Yeah. That I would think that's super important.
Because then we're in a we-volution. Like a me-volution is limited. You know what I mean? A we-volution, we have creative power. We are creative.
That's really powerful, Colleen. Really powerful. I couldn't agree with you more with that. That really, it can really transform in that potential. Just as you said it, it's amazing how, like you said early on, if you can spot it at that very beginning and start at that moment, how much power can be resolved in the conflict that is, kind of arising at that time. It's really powerful. Really powerful.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more.
That moment, that space we talked about from Frankl, that space in between the stimulus and response is so applicable to conflict,
Yeah, Ram Dass calls mindfulness spacious awareness. And you're absolutely right, Jeremy. And I absolutely, I can move from spacious awareness to, like this morning, I misplaced my phone. Here I am, all mindful, doing my meditation, can't find my phone anywhere, so I wasn't present. Where do I find my phone? How ironic, underneath my meditation table. It's like, we're constantly having to bring ourselves in to make the conscious commitment to continually connecting into embodied presence. It's continual and ongoing. And have you ever been driving and then all of a sudden you arrive somewhere and you go, I don't really remember driving here because you weren't conscious or present.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
continually ongoing practice.